Hi there, Bill from Jasper Precision Tools, the only tool you'll ever need to cut a perfect circle every single time. Today we're going to be working with the 300 XLC. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to get it mounted up to your router, and we're going to cut a sample of a tabletop today. Today I'm going to be using a quarter cable plunge router, but it will fit on just about any router that you have. So let's get after it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to line up the XLC on the hole guide that comes with your piece. And for instance, on this one I'm using a quarter cable router, so the holes in here are black. So then I will take those holes and line it up exactly with where my mounting pieces are on my router. As a tip for you, I have used a red crayon in the past because I take this piece on and off quite frequently. So that will help me line this up that much easier to get going from there. Use the screws provided, or if you have your own, to mount the piece flush on. So what I've done is I've placed the router jig on my router and tightened about 3/4 of the way down with the screws. The next piece that we're going to move to is the centering disc that comes with your tool. And what this is meant to do is to get you absolute dead-on zero center. So we'll place this inside the 300 XLC, and then the larger 1/4 inch pin will go into your 1/4 inch collet. So once I've gotten this centered, I'm going to change out my bit and my collet because the 300 XLC is calibrated for a 1/2 inch router bit. And now we are ready to cut some circles. So for today's tabletop, we're going to cut a 36-inch tabletop. So what we'll do is we'll follow our inch guide over to 36, and I actually want to run this at about 36 1/4. So what I'm going to go is I'm going to find the line on the other side that indicates 1/4 inches, which will be one up from here, and we will place our pin inside of 36 1/4 inch. And you want to place this about halfway down so it will hit through the piece. So we're going to cut a 36 1/4 inch circle on a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So what I want to do is I want to get my markings so I know exactly where I'm operating. Now I'm going to run it out with a couple extra inches. So I'm going to put a mark at 40 inches long ways down the board, and then 24 will be our center. So 36-inch circle, 18 is our half. I have a little bit of extra room, so I'm going to make a mark at 19 inches and finish this X so that way I know where to put my centering pin. Okay, so the next step will be to put an 1/8 inch hole about halfway through the thickness of our piece, which we're using 1/2 inch plywood. So we're going to go about a 1/4 of an inch into it for our pivot pin to center into. So as a tip for when you're using these circle cutting guides, what we do is we use a double-sided tape on the bottom of the piece that we're attaching. So whether you use a 2x4 underneath or a sheet of plywood underneath the piece you're actually cutting the circle into, always place double-sided tape inside of the circle diameter that you're going to be using, because when you finish that cut, that piece is now free inside that circle, and you don't want it to move and kick around and possibly nick a corner of your perfect circle. So the next piece that we have is to get the pivot pin into the hole that we drilled into the piece. So we'll flip the router base over, and it helps to kind of get on top of it so you can see exactly where this pin is. We'll drop it in and then very lightly tap that pin so it's seated into the piece. Now the next thing is to make sure that we're not going to have any overlap or cut outside of the piece, and just give the thing a spin. Make sure that we're operating inside of where we can cut. Okay, now that we've got our first pass made, it's cutting perfectly, so we're going to take the second pass, which will actually cut all the way through the piece. So we finished our cut. Make sure that your router bit is raised up all the way. Then you can lift the jig and the router up out of the piece. Set that aside. And you have a perfect circle.